I was standing in my driveway staring at the fluorescent orange paper stuck to my mailbox when I realized that joining the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association was going to be the worst decision of my life. The notice read, "Violation Notice, Unauthorized Ground Disturbance and Unapproved Exterior Modifications. Fine, $500. Additional fines of $100 per day until violation is corrected." My name, Patrick Wilson, was printed at the top in bold letters like I was some kind of criminal. I had just spent $43,000 installing a state-of-the-art geothermal heating and cooling system for my 3-bedroom ranch house in Naperville, Illinois. The system was supposed to cut my energy bills by 60%, reduce my carbon footprint, and increase my property value by at least $20,000 according to the appraiser I had consulted. But apparently, none of that mattered to Patricia Hartman, the president of our HOA and the most unreasonable person I had ever encountered. I crumpled the notice in my fist and marched straight to my front door. My wife Sarah had left 3 weeks ago to care for her mother in Florida after she had fallen and broken her hip. She would be gone for at least 2 more months, which meant I was dealing with this nightmare alone. Inside, I grabbed my phone and called the number listed at the bottom of the violation notice. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Meadowbrook Heights HOA, this is Patricia speaking." Her voice was sharp and nasal, exactly what you would expect from someone who spent their free time measuring the height of people's grass with a ruler. "Patricia, this is Patrick Wilson from 2847 Maple Drive. I just received a violation notice about my geothermal system installation." "Yes, Mr. Wilson. You failed to submit the proper paperwork for approval before beginning construction. The bylaws are very clear about this." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice level. I did submit paperwork. I sent an email to the HOA Architectural Committee 6 weeks ago with all the plans and contractor information. I never heard back, so I assumed it was approved. "We don't accept email submissions, Mr. Wilson. All requests must be submitted in physical form to my home address, which is clearly stated in the bylaws you signed when you purchased your property." Nobody told me that. The real estate agent said I could handle everything electronically. Your real estate agent doesn't make the rules here. "I do." There was a smugness in her voice that made my blood pressure spike. "The fine stands. You have 30 days to remove the system or face additional penalties." "Remove it? Are you insane? I just spent over $40,000 on this installation. It's completely underground. The only visible component is a small vent pipe that's barely 3 inches in diameter. The bylaws state that no major ground disturbance can occur without prior written approval. You dug holes 30 feet deep in your yard. That's a major disturbance. It's geothermal energy, Patricia. It's good for the environment. It increases property values for the entire neighborhood. I don't care if it prints money. You violated the rules. The fine is due in 14 days. Goodbye, Mr. Wilson." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. This was absolutely ridiculous. I had done everything right. I had hired licensed contractors. I had pulled all the necessary permits from the city. I had even paid extra to have the landscaping restored perfectly after the installation was complete. The next morning, I drove to the Naperville City Hall to speak with someone in the building department. The clerk, a friendly woman in her 50s named Martha, pulled up my permit records on her computer. "Everything looks perfect here, Mr. Wilson. Your geothermal installation passed all inspections. You're completely up to code. Can you print that out for me? I'm having trouble with my HOA." She gave me a sympathetic look. Say no more. I've heard stories about Meadowbrook Heights. That Patricia woman came in here last year trying to tell us that one of your neighbors needed city approval to paint their shutters black. We had to explain to her about 5 times that exterior paint colors aren't under city jurisdiction. Martha printed out 3 copies of my permit approval and inspection records. I thanked her and headed straight to the county assessor's office. I needed documentation showing how much value the geothermal system added to my property. The assessor, a balding man named Tom Richardson, listened to my situation and nodded. Geothermal systems are excellent investments. Based on the specifications you're describing, I'd estimate your home value increased by somewhere between $22,000 and $28,000. These systems are highly desirable, especially with energy costs going up. Can I get that in writing? Absolutely. He typed up a brief assessment letter on official county letterhead and signed it. Good luck with your HOA. Those organizations can be trickier than dealing with the IRS sometimes. Armed with my documentation, I decided to attend the next HOA board meeting, which according to the community website was scheduled for Thursday evening at 7 p.m. The meetings were held in the community center, a bland beige building near the neighborhood entrance. I arrived 15 minutes early. The meeting room was set up with rows of metal folding chairs facing a long table where the board members sat. Patricia was already there, arranging papers and whispering with 2 other board members. She was exactly what I expected. A woman in her late 40s with an aggressive blonde bob haircut, too much makeup, and a pantsuit that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." About 20 other homeowners trickled in over the next few minutes. I recognized a few faces from around the neighborhood, but didn't know anyone by name. We all kept to ourselves mostly, which was apparently what Patricia preferred. At exactly 7 p.m., Patricia banged a gavel on the table like she was a judge presiding over a capital murder case. This meeting of the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association is now called to order. We have several items on the agenda tonight, but first, I want to address a serious violation that has come to our attention. She looked directly at me. Here we go. Mr. Patrick Wilson of 2847 Maple Drive has installed a geothermal system without proper HOA approval. This is a flagrant disregard for our community standards and bylaws. The board has levied a $500 fine with additional daily penalties until the violation is corrected. A woman in the front row raised her hand. What exactly is wrong with a geothermal system? Aren't those good for the environment? Patricia's face tightened. That's not the issue, Deborah. The issue is following proper procedures. We can't have residents making major modifications without approval. Today it's a geothermal system. Tomorrow someone might decide to install a cell phone tower in their backyard. That's a ridiculous comparison, I said, standing up. All eyes turned to me. I'm not doing anything dangerous or unsightly. I submitted plans via email, which I now know wasn't the correct procedure, but that was an honest mistake. The system is entirely underground except for a small vent pipe. It's increasing my property value and therefore the value of all our homes. I have documentation from the county assessor stating the system adds between $22,000 and $28,000 to my home's value. I held up the letter Tom had given me. Patricia wasn't impressed. You violated the bylaws, Mr. Wilson. It's black and white. You can't simply ignore the rules because you think your project is beneficial. I'm not ignoring anything. I'm trying to work with you here. What do you want me to do? The system is installed and operational. It passed all city inspections. It's completely legal and safe. Another board member, a thin man with glasses, spoke up. Patricia, maybe we could grandfather this in. If it's already installed and the city approved it, forcing him to remove it seems excessive. The bylaws don't have a grandfather clause for violations, Robert. We have to be consistent. Then let me pay a fine for the procedural error, I said. A reasonable fine, not $500 plus daily penalties, and then approve the system retroactively since there's nothing actually wrong with it. Patricia shook her head. The fine is already set. As for retroactive approval, the board will need to review your plans according to our standard process, which takes 60 to 90 days. 90 days. You're going to charge me $100 a day for 90 days. That's $9,000 on top of the $500 I already owe. That's insane. Then perhaps you should have followed the rules from the beginning. Her voice was ice cold. An older man in the back stood up. Patricia, this is getting out of hand. We all know the email system should be acceptable for submissions. It's 2025, for crying out loud. Nobody sends physical mail anymore unless they're sending birthday cards to their grandmother. Several other homeowners murmured in agreement. Patricia's face was turning red. The bylaws state physical submissions, and that's what we require. This meeting is not a debate forum. Mr. Wilson has received his violation notice. The board's decision stands. Now, moving on to the next agenda item, we need to discuss the July 4th fireworks policy. I sat down, fuming. This wasn't over. There was no way I was paying $10,000 in fines for installing a perfectly legal, environmentally friendly system that made my home more valuable. After the meeting ended, several homeowners approached me in the parking lot. "Don't let her bully you," said the older man who had spoken up. His name was George Martinez, and he had lived in Meadowbrook Heights for 12 years. Patricia has been on a power trip ever since she became president. Last year, she fined the Johnsons $300 because their Halloween decorations were up 2 days past November 1st. A younger couple introduced themselves as Mike and Jennifer Torres. She sent us a violation notice because our mailbox was the wrong shade of black, Jennifer said. We had to repaint it 3 times before she approved it. The original color and the new color looked identical to us. Has anyone ever challenged her? I asked. A few people have tried, George said, but most folks just pay the fines because fighting it takes too much time and energy. Patricia knows this. She's counting on you giving up. I'm not giving up. This is ridiculous. Good, Mike said. If you need any support, let us know. A lot of us are tired of her dictator routine. Over the weekend, I researched Illinois HOA laws extensively. I discovered that HOAs had broad authority, but they still had to operate within certain legal boundaries. They couldn't levy fines that were unconscionably excessive, and they had to follow their own bylaws consistently. I dug out my copy of the Meadowbrook Heights bylaws and read through all 63 pages. On page 47, I found something interesting. The bylaws stated that the Architectural Committee had 30 days to respond to any submission. If they failed to respond within 30 days, the submission was considered approved by default. I had sent my email 6 weeks ago. They had never responded at all. I took screenshots of my original email with the timestamp clearly visible, printed everything out, and prepared a formal appeal letter. On Monday morning, I hand-delivered it to Patricia's house. She lived in a large colonial at the end of Oakmont Drive, the most expensive section of Meadowbrook Heights. Her front yard was immaculate, with perfectly trimmed hedges and not a single leaf out of place. I rang the doorbell and waited. Patricia opened the door wearing a velour tracksuit and an annoyed expression. "Mr. Wilson, what are you doing here?" I'm hand-delivering my appeal of the violation notice. According to the bylaws, I have the right to appeal within 10 days of receiving a violation. She took the envelope without looking at it. The board will review your appeal at the next meeting. Actually, according to Section 12, subsection D of the bylaws, the board must review appeals within 5 business days and provide a written response within 3 business days after that. Her jaw tightened. I'm aware of the bylaws, Mr. Wilson. Then you're also aware that Section 8, subsection C states that if the architectural committee fails to respond to a submission within 30 days, the submission is automatically approved. I submitted my plans 42 days ago and never received a response. You submitted via email, which isn't valid. The bylaws don't specify the method of submission. They just say submissions must be made to the architectural committee. I sent my plans to the committee's official email address, which is listed on the HOA website. Patricia's face was turning that red color again. The website information is outdated. Physical submissions have always been the standard. Then you need to update your website and notify all homeowners of the correct procedure. You can't enforce rules that aren't properly communicated. I'm not a lawyer, but I've done my research. If you push this, I'll take it to court, and I'm confident a judge will side with me. Additionally, I'll file a complaint with the Illinois Attorney General's office about the HOA's failure to maintain accurate information and follow its own bylaws. We stared at each other for a long moment. I could see her calculating whether this fight was worth it. The board will review your appeal, she finally said and closed the door in my face. 3 days later, I received a letter from the HOA board. They had denied my appeal but reduced the initial fine to $250 and eliminated the daily penalties, provided I submitted proper physical paperwork within 10 days. It was still highway robbery, but it was better than the original demand. I wasn't satisfied, though. The principle of the matter bothered me. I had done nothing wrong, and I wasn't going to pay a fine for Patricia's power trip. I called a real estate attorney named Marcus Goldstein, who had good reviews and experience with HOA disputes. His office was in downtown Naperville, in a modern building with glass walls and expensive art. Marcus was in his early 40s, sharply dressed, and very direct. HOA disputes are tricky, he said after I explained my situation. The courts generally give HOAs wide latitude to enforce their rules. However, you have some strong arguments here. The bylaws clearly state that failure to respond within 30 days constitutes automatic approval. The fact that they're now claiming email submissions aren't valid, despite having an official email address for submissions, shows inconsistent enforcement. What are my options? You can pay the reduced fine and move on with your life, or you can fight it. Fighting it means preparing for potential litigation. I'd send a formal demand letter first, outlining the legal issues and giving them one more chance to withdraw the fine. If they refuse, we file a lawsuit. These cases usually take 6 to 12 months to resolve. How much would that cost me? I charge $250 an hour. A case like this, if it goes to trial, could run you anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. However, if we win, we can ask the judge to award attorney's fees, which means the HOA would have to pay your legal costs. I thought about it. $15,000 was a lot of money to spend on principal, but the geothermal system had already cost me $43,000. If I let Patricia bully me now, what would stop her from doing it again in the future? Let's send the demand letter, I said. Marcus drafted a 5-page letter citing specific Illinois statutes and case law. It was impressive and intimidating. He sent it via certified mail to Patricia and all 5 board members. 2 days later, Patricia called me. She was furious. "You're suing the HOA? Are you out of your mind? I haven't sued anyone yet. My attorney sent a letter outlining the legal problems with your fine. This could all go away if you just admit you're wrong and rescind the violation. We're not wrong. You broke the rules. Patricia, you're not listening. Your own bylaws say that if you don't respond within 30 days, the submission is approved. You didn't respond at all. You don't have a leg to stand on here. We'll see about that. I'm forwarding your lawyer's letter to the HOA's legal counsel. If you want a legal battle, you'll get one. She hung up. I immediately called Marcus and told him what happened. Good, he said. Let them lawyer up. Their attorney will read our letter and tell them the same thing I'm telling you. They don't have a strong case. Most likely their lawyer will advise them to settle. A week passed. Then, I didn't hear anything from the HOA. The 10-day deadline for submitting physical paperwork came and went. I half expected another violation notice, but nothing came. Sarah called me from Florida. How are things going with the house? I had been avoiding telling her about the HOA mess because she already had enough stress with her mother's recovery. But she could hear something was off in my voice. Everything's fine. Just some paperwork issues with the HOA. Patrick, what happened? I explained everything. There was a long silence on the other end. You hired a lawyer. Patrick, we can't afford a long legal battle right now. I know, but we can't let them push us around either. The geothermal system is going to save us money in the long run. It's worth fighting for. Just promise me you'll be reasonable about this. Don't let it become some kind of crusade. I promise. But even as I said it, I knew I was already in too deep to back down. The following Monday, I received a call from a law firm called Brandt & Associates. The woman on the phone identified herself as Catherine Brandt, the HOA's attorney. Mr. Wilson, I've reviewed your situation, and I'd like to propose a settlement. The HOA will rescind the fine entirely if you agree to submit proper physical paperwork for your geothermal system within 30 days. We'll expedite the approval process and have a decision within 2 weeks of receiving your submission. So they're admitting they were wrong. Not exactly. We're simply agreeing that there was confusion about the proper submission process, and both parties could have handled the situation better. I want the violation notice removed from my HOA record entirely. I don't want this coming back to haunt me if I try to sell my house someday. That's acceptable. We'll expunge the violation from your file completely. Do we have an agreement? I should have felt victorious, but mostly I just felt tired. Yes, send me the settlement terms in writing. I'll email them to you today. Better send them physically, I said. Apparently, email doesn't count in Meadowbrook Heights, she laughed. I'll do both. The settlement papers arrived 2 days later. I signed them, submitted physical copies of my geothermal system plans, and waited. Exactly 12 days later, I received an approval letter from the architectural committee. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 weeks after the settlement, I was mowing my lawn when Patricia pulled up in her black Mercedes SUV. She got out and marched across my yard like she owned it. We need to talk about your property value assessment. I turned off the mower. Excuse me. The letter you showed at the board meeting, claiming your geothermal system increased your home value by $28,000. That assessment is going to affect everyone's property taxes in the neighborhood. You can't just artificially inflate your home value like that. It's not artificial. The county assessor evaluated the system and gave me an official assessment. That's how property values work, Patricia. Improvements increase value. Yes, but your improvement is underground. It's not visible. Home values are supposed to be based on curb appeal and comparable sales. That's not how it works at all. Home value is based on the property's features, condition, and market demand. A geothermal system is a major feature. It's like having a new roof or a renovated kitchen. I'm filing a complaint with the county assessor's office. That valuation needs to be reviewed. You can't file a complaint about someone else's property assessment. It's none of your business what my house is worth. It is my business when it affects the entire neighborhood's tax rates. She stormed off before I could respond. I stood there wondering what had just happened. Was she really going to try to challenge my property assessment? Apparently, yes. A week later, I received a notice from the county assessor's office stating that my property valuation was under review following a complaint from a concerned citizen. I had to submit documentation of the geothermal system's cost and specifications. I called Tom Richardson at the assessor's office. "Tom, this is Patrick Wilson. I got a notice about my property valuation being challenged." "Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Some woman from your HOA called and filed a formal complaint. She claimed you had falsified improvement costs to artificially inflate your home value." I told her that was ridiculous, but she insisted we open a review. This is harassment. I gave you legitimate documentation of the installation costs. I know. The review is just a formality. Submit copies of your contractor invoices and we'll close this out quickly. Her complaint doesn't have any merit. I submitted everything Tom requested: contractor invoices, materials receipts, permit costs, even the landscaping restoration bills. The total came to $43,712. Tom closed the review within a week and sent me a letter confirming my property's assessed value remained unchanged. But Patricia wasn't done. At the next HOA meeting, she proposed a new bylaw amendment that would require homeowners to get HOA approval before making any improvement that could increase their property value by more than $5,000. "This is about maintaining consistency across our neighborhood," she said to the small crowd of homeowners. "We don't want dramatic variations in property values. It affects our insurance rates and tax assessments." George Martinez stood up. "Patricia, this is absurd. You can't prevent people from improving their homes. That's what homeownership is about. My wife and I remodeled our kitchen last year. That probably increased our value by $15,000. Should we have asked your permission? If this bylaw passes, then yes, you should." "This is targeted harassment," I said. "You're proposing this amendment because you're upset about my geothermal system. This isn't about the neighborhood. It's about your ego. Mr. Wilson, you have been nothing but hostile and combative since you violated our bylaws." "I'm trying to prevent future problems." "No, you're trying to punish me for not rolling over when you overstepped your authority." Other homeowners started speaking up. Jennifer Torres pointed out that the proposed amendment would basically give the HOA veto power over any home improvement. Mike Torres said it would harm everyone's property values by preventing renovations and updates. The board called for a vote on the amendment. It failed 4-1. Only Patricia voted in favor. She looked like she wanted to throw her gavel at someone. After the meeting, George pulled me aside. "She's not going to let this go, you know. Patricia doesn't handle being wrong very well. I've seen her hold grudges for years. What can she possibly do at this point? She's tried fines, legal challenges, and new bylaws. None of it worked. She'll find something. Just watch your back." George was right. Over the next month, I received 3 more violation notices for increasingly petty things. My garbage cans were visible from the street after pickup time, which was technically true because I hadn't brought them in yet. That was a $75 fine. My mailbox post had a small scratch in the paint, which required immediate repair. Another $50. My lawn supposedly exceeded the maximum grass height of 3 inches, though I had just mowed it 2 days earlier. another $100 fine. I took photos documenting everything and appealed every single violation. Most of them were completely frivolous, and the board denied at least half of them. But Patricia kept looking for new things to cite me for. I went back to Marcus Goldstein. This is targeted harassment. She's clearly singling me out because I fought back on the geothermal system fine. Marcus reviewed all the violation notices I had received. You're right. This is textbook harassment. We can file a lawsuit claiming the HOA is abusing its authority and engaging in discriminatory enforcement. We'd also include Patricia personally for her role in this pattern of behavior. How much would that cost? More than the first case. Maybe $20,000 if it goes to trial. But again, if we win, the HOA pays your attorney fees. Plus, we could ask for damages for emotional distress and harassment. I thought about Sarah in Florida, dealing with her mother's difficult recovery. I thought about the stress this whole situation was causing. I thought about the principle of standing up to bullies. Let's do it. Marcus filed the lawsuit in DuPage County Circuit Court. The complaint named the Meadowbrook Heights HOA and Patricia Hartman, personally, as defendants. It alleged harassment, discriminatory enforcement of HOA rules, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The local newspaper picked up the story. The headline read, "Naperville homeowner sues HOA over green energy system." The article quoted me talking about how I had installed an environmentally friendly geothermal system only to face thousands of dollars in fines and ongoing harassment. The story went viral on social media. Local environmental groups reached out to offer support. A state representative named Linda Choi even called me to discuss potential legislation that would protect homeowners who install renewable energy systems. "What you're dealing with is exactly why we need stronger laws," she said. HOAs shouldn't be able to prevent or penalize green energy installations that are otherwise legal and properly permitted. The publicity was both good and bad. Good because it put pressure on the HOA to settle. Bad because it made Patricia even more angry and defensive. She gave an interview to the same newspaper claiming I was a troublemaker who had repeatedly violated community standards, and was now attacking the HOA with frivolous litigation. That article quoted several anonymous Meadowbrook Heights residents supporting Patricia, though I suspected she had written those statements herself. But it also quoted George Martinez, Mike and Jennifer Torres, and 3 other neighbors who all said they had experienced similar harassment from Patricia. The discovery phase of the lawsuit was revealing. Marcus subpoenaed all HOA records for the past 5 years, including violation notices, fines collected, and board meeting minutes. What we found was shocking. Patricia had issued over 300 violation notices during her 3-year tenure as president. That was 10 times more than the previous president had issued in 8 years. The violations ranged from serious issues like unpermitted construction to completely absurd things like doormats that were non-conforming colors and wind chimes that created excessive noise. Even more interesting, the pattern of enforcement was wildly inconsistent. Several homeowners had installed solar panels without any HOA pushback. One resident had built a large deck that clearly violated the setback requirements, but there was no violation notice in their file. Another had painted their house a color not on the approved list, but apparently that was fine. Marcus dug deeper and discovered something damning. The homeowners who didn't receive violations for their infractions all had something in common. They were friends with Patricia. They had donated to her charity events. They had supported her at board meetings. This is selective enforcement based on personal relationships, Marcus said. That's illegal. HOAs have to apply their rules consistently to everyone. They can't play favorites. We added selective enforcement to our complaint. Patricia's attorney, Catherine Brandt, tried to get the case dismissed, but the judge allowed it to proceed. The deposition phase was even more interesting. Marcus deposed Patricia for 6 hours. I wasn't allowed in the room, but he recorded everything and showed me the video afterward. Patricia was defensive and combative throughout. When Marcus asked her why some homeowners received violations while others didn't for similar infractions, she claimed it was based on the severity of each situation and timing of when violations were noticed. But you noticed Mr. Wilson's geothermal system immediately, correct? Marcus asked. Yes, because it involved significant ground disturbance. And you noticed his garbage cans being left out after pickup. Yes. And you personally inspected his mailbox post and discovered a small paint scratch. I notice things when I drive through the neighborhood. Do you drive past Mr. Wilson's house frequently? I drive throughout the entire neighborhood regularly. But specifically past Mr. Wilson's house, Patricia shifted in her seat. His house is in a central location. How many times per week would you say you drive past his house? I don't know. Several times. More than you drive past other houses. I don't keep track. Marcus pulled out a document. This is a log Mr. Wilson has been keeping for the past 6 weeks. He's documented your vehicle passing his house 43 times. That's more than once per day. Would you say that's part of your regular patrol of the neighborhood? Patricia's face flushed. I have the right to drive wherever I want in my own neighborhood. Of course. But doesn't 43 times in 6 weeks seem excessive? Especially when you drive past other houses in the neighborhood an average of twice per week. I'm not stalking him, if that's what you're implying. I'm just trying to understand why you pay such close attention to Mr. Wilson's property. The deposition went on like that. Marcus was methodical and relentless. By the end, Patricia looked exhausted and angry. We also deposed the other board members. Most of them admitted they had simply gone along with Patricia's recommendations without much independent analysis. One board member, a woman named Susan Clark, was surprisingly candid. Patricia can be very intimidating, Susan said. If you disagree with her, she makes your life difficult. She'll argue for hours. She'll send you long emails late at night. It's honestly easier to just vote the way she wants. Did you think the $500 fine against Mr. Wilson was appropriate? Not really. But Patricia insisted it was necessary to maintain standards. Did you review Mr. Wilson's geothermal system plans yourself? No. Patricia said they were non-compliant. Did you know that the bylaws state automatic approval if the committee doesn't respond within 30 days? Susan hesitated. I wasn't aware of that specific provision. This was good stuff. It showed that Patricia had dominated the board and made unilateral decisions without proper deliberation. The case was scheduled for trial in September, about 6 months after we filed. But in early August, Catherine Brandt called Marcus with a settlement offer. The HOA is willing to settle for $25,000, plus attorney fees and expungement of all violation notices from Mr. Wilson's record. Marcus called me immediately. They're offering $25,000. That's a solid offer. It would cover all your attorney fees and put some money in your pocket. What happens to Patricia? She'd remain as HOA president. The settlement doesn't address her position. Then no. I don't want her to be able to keep doing this to other people. Patrick, I understand your feelings, but settlements are about practical outcomes. If we go to trial, there's always a risk we could lose. What are our chances of winning? I'd say 75%. We have strong evidence of harassment and selective enforcement. But juries can be unpredictable, especially in HOA cases. Some people think HOAs should have broad authority to maintain neighborhoods. Make a counteroffer. $50,000, attorney fees, expungement of all violations, and Patricia has to resign as president. Marcus laughed. They'll never agree to that. Try anyway. He did. Catherine Brandt called back 2 days later. My clients will agree to $35,000 in attorney fees. They won't agree to force Patricia's resignation. That's a matter for the HOA membership to decide, not a court settlement. Marcus and I discussed it. $35,000 plus attorney fees would mean I'd walk away with about $20,000 after all my costs. That was significant money. What if we go to trial and win? I asked. What could a jury award? Hard to say. Maybe $50,000 to $75,000 for damages, plus attorney fees and potential punitive damages if they find Patricia's conduct was especially egregious. But again, there's risk. Let's go to trial. Sarah called me that night. Her mother was doing better and would be coming home to Florida in 2 more weeks. Sarah planned to stay another month to make sure everything was stable. How's the lawsuit going? She asked. They offered to settle for $35,000. Patrick, that's great, take it. I'm not taking it. Patricia gets to stay as HOA president. So what? We get $35,000 and the harassment stops. That's a win. It's not enough. She needs to face real consequences. Listen to yourself. This has become an obsession. I know Patricia is awful, but you're spending so much time and energy on this fight. Is it really worth it? Yes, it is. There was a long silence. I'll be home in 6 weeks. We'll talk about this then. The trial started on September 15th. The courtroom was half full with curious observers, including several Meadowbrook Heights residents and a reporter from the local paper. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Marion Foster. She had a reputation for being fair but tough. Marcus presented our case methodically. He showed the timeline of events, starting with my email submission of the geothermal plans, the lack of response from the architectural committee, the initial violation notice, and the escalating harassment afterward. He introduced evidence of the inconsistent enforcement patterns, showing how Patricia had ignored similar or worse violations by homeowners who were friendly with her. He played clips from Patricia's deposition, where she struggled to explain her frequent drives past my house and her aggressive pursuit of minor violations. He called me to testify. I explained how the geothermal system worked, how much it cost, how much energy it saved, and how much it increased my property value. I described the stress of dealing with constant violation notices for petty issues. Has this affected your enjoyment of your home? Marcus asked. Absolutely. I used to love living in Meadowbrook Heights. Now, I dread checking my mailbox because I never know what ridiculous violation notice I'll find. I've considered selling the house just to get away from the HOA, but that would mean taking a loss on the geothermal system I just installed. Catherine Brandt cross-examined me aggressively. She tried to paint me as a rule breaker who thought he was above HOA regulations. You didn't think the rules applied to you, did you, Mr. Wilson? I followed what I believed was the correct procedure. When I realized there was confusion, I tried to work with the HOA to resolve it, but Patricia was more interested in punishing me than finding a solution. You hired an attorney and sued the HOA instead of just paying a small fine. The fine wasn't small. It was $500 plus $100 a day. That would have been thousands of dollars for doing nothing wrong. And even after that was settled, Patricia continued harassing me with frivolous violations. Those violations were all legitimate according to HOA bylaws. Some were so petty that they bordered on absurd. a scratch on my mailbox post that was barely visible, grass that was allegedly too long even though I had just mowed it. These weren't legitimate enforcement actions. They were retaliation. The cross-examination went on for over an hour, but I felt like I held my own. Marcus called George Martinez as a witness. George testified about Patricia's pattern of aggressive enforcement and how it had gotten worse over time. Has Mrs. Hartman ever issued you any violation notices? Marcus asked. 3 in the past 2 years. 1 because my trash can was visible from the street, 1 because I had a garden gnome that was supposedly a prohibited lawn ornament, and 1 because my car was parked in my driveway with an expired registration sticker. Did other homeowners have similar issues that weren't cited? Absolutely. The Johnsons have an entire collection of garden decorations. The Andersons regularly leave their trash cans out for days, and I've seen multiple cars in the neighborhood with expired tags. We also called Susan Clark, the board member who had been candid in her deposition. She testified reluctantly but honestly about how Patricia dominated the board and pushed through decisions without proper deliberation. The HOA's defense was weak. Catherine Brandt tried to argue that Patricia was just doing her job and enforcing the rules as written. She claimed that any inconsistencies in enforcement were due to the practical reality that not every violation could be caught and addressed. Patricia testified in her own defense. She was poised and confident, insisting that everything she had done was proper and necessary. Mr. Wilson violated our bylaws repeatedly, she said. Someone has to maintain standards in our community. If we let one person get away with violations, it opens the door for everyone to ignore the rules. But other people did get away with violations, Marcus said during cross-examination. Your friend Brenda Peterson installed solar panels without submitting any paperwork at all. You never fined her. I wasn't aware she hadn't submitted paperwork. Really? Solar panels are highly visible, much more visible than an underground geothermal system. You never notice them. I must not have. Marcus pulled out photos. These solar panels cover half of Mrs. Peterson's roof. They're clearly visible from the street. You expect the jury to believe you didn't notice them during your regular neighborhood patrols. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. Perhaps I did notice them, but assumed she had gotten approval. But you didn't assume that about Mr. Wilson's geothermal system, even though it's underground and barely visible. The geothermal system involved major ground disturbance. It was a different situation. How did you even know about the ground disturbance? The installation was completed over a weekend. Did you happen to drive past Mr. Wilson's house during the installation? I may have. How many times? I don't recall. Marcus pulled out more documents. Mr. Wilson's contractor logs show that you drove past his house 7 times over the 2-day installation period. You actually stopped and took photos on one occasion. Does that refresh your memory? Patricia's face turned red. I wanted to document the violation. Or perhaps you were looking for any reason to cite Mr. Wilson because you didn't like him. That's not true. You've issued him 5 violation notices in 3 months. You've driven past his house 43 times in 6 weeks. You challenged his property assessment with the county. You proposed a new bylaw specifically targeting home improvements like his. Doesn't that suggest a personal vendetta? No. It suggests I take my responsibilities seriously. The jury didn't look convinced. The trial lasted 3 days. Closing arguments were on day 4. Marcus gave a passionate summary of how Patricia had abused her authority and turned the HOA into a weapon against a homeowner who had done nothing wrong except stand up for himself. Catherine Brandt argued that HOAs needed strong leadership to maintain property values and community standards, and that Patricia was simply doing her job. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When they came back, the forewoman read the verdict. In the matter of Patrick Wilson versus Meadowbrook Heights, HOA and Patricia Hartman, we find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. We award damages in the amount of $60,000, plus attorney fees and costs. We further find that Patricia Hartman acted with malice and award punitive damages of $25,000. I felt relief wash over me. $85,000 plus attorney fees. It was a complete victory. Patricia looked stunned. Her face went pale and then red. She whispered urgently to Catherine Brandt, who shook her head. Judge Foster banged her gavel. The judgment is entered. Mrs. Hartman, I'm going to say something off the record here. You abused your position of authority in this HOA. You turned what should be a community organization into your personal fiefdom. I hope this verdict teaches you that actions have consequences. This court is adjourned. The local newspaper ran the story the next day with the headline, Jury awards $85,000 to homeowner in HOA harassment case. The article included quotes from the trial and noted that it was one of the largest verdicts against an HOA in Illinois history. The story got picked up by national news outlets. I did an interview with a cable news show about HOA overreach. Representative Linda Choi announced she would be introducing legislation called the Green Energy Homeowner Protection Act that would prevent HOAs from blocking or penalizing renewable energy installations. The money came through 6 weeks later after Catherine Brandt exhausted her appeals options. The total was $93,000 after attorney fees and interest. I put $60,000 into savings, used $10,000 to pay down our mortgage, and spent the rest on some home improvements Sarah and I had been putting off. Patricia resigned as HOA president 2 weeks after the verdict. The board issued a statement saying she was stepping down to pursue other interests, but everyone knew the truth. She had been forced out by embarrassed board members who didn't want to be associated with the legal disaster. An emergency HOA meeting was called to elect a new president. George Martinez agreed to run and won easily. His first act was to announce a complete review of all HOA bylaws and enforcement policies. We're going to modernize our procedures, he said at the meeting. We'll accept electronic submissions for all applications. We'll establish clear, objective standards for violations, and we'll implement an oversight process to prevent any individual from wielding too much power. The residents applauded. Several people came up to me afterward to thank me for fighting back. You did what a lot of us wanted to do but were too afraid to try, Jennifer Torres said. You made this neighborhood better for all of us. Sarah came home a week later. Her mother was recovering well and had hired a part-time aide to help with daily tasks. Sarah was exhausted but happy to be home. I showed her the settlement check and told her everything that had happened during the trial. She listened quietly, then hugged me. I'm sorry I doubted you, she said. You were right to fight. I was just worried about the money and the stress. But you did the right thing. It wasn't just about the money, it was about not letting bullies win. I know, and I'm proud of you. 3 months later, I was in the backyard enjoying the warm October afternoon when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Wilson. This is Detective Sarah Kemp from the Naperville Police Department. I need to speak with you about Patricia Hartman. My stomach dropped. What about her? We're investigating allegations of financial misconduct related to the Meadowbrook Heights HOA. Your lawsuit uncovered evidence that led us to open this investigation. Can you come down to the station? I drove to the police station immediately. Detective Kemp was a serious woman in her early 40s with short, dark hair. She led me to a conference room where another detective, a man named James Crawford, was waiting. "We've been reviewing HOA financial records as part of a broader investigation," Detective Kemp said. "During the discovery phase of your lawsuit, your attorney subpoenaed 5 years of HOA records. Those records showed some irregularities that concerned us." She pulled out a spreadsheet. "Over the past 3 years, approximately $78,000 in HOA fines were collected. According to the bylaws, fine revenue is supposed to go into a reserve fund for community improvements. But we can't account for about $32,000 of that money. Where did it go? That's what we're trying to determine. We've obtained a warrant for Mrs. Hartman's bank records. We believe she may have been embezzling HOA funds." Over the next few weeks, the police investigation uncovered a scheme that was both brazen and stupid. Patricia had been issuing excessive fines, collecting the money through checks made payable to her personally or cash, and then only depositing a portion of it into the HOA account. The rest went into her personal accounts. She had gotten away with it because she controlled all the financial records and the other board members had rubber-stamped everything without scrutiny. The police arrested Patricia on November 12th and charged her with theft, embezzlement, and fraud. The local paper ran her mugshot on the front page. She looked angry and defiant, even in handcuffs. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor wasn't interested. The case went to trial in March. I was called as a witness again, this time to testify about the fines she had levied against me and how the money had been collected. The evidence against Patricia was overwhelming. Bank records, HOA financial statements, and testimony from other homeowners who had paid fines all painted a clear picture of systematic theft. The jury convicted her on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution to the HOA. George called me after the sentencing. "It's finally over. Patricia is going to prison, the HOA is going to be paid back, and we can move forward." "How's the neighborhood doing?" "Much better. We've updated all the bylaws. We've established a financial oversight committee. And we've started a neighborhood social committee to actually build community instead of just policing everyone. You should come to the next cookout." I did. It was the first time I had actually enjoyed a community event in Meadowbrook Heights. People were relaxed and friendly. There was no tension, no fear of being cited for stepping on the wrong patch of grass. Mike Torres approached me with a beer. "I heard you're getting some kind of award from Representative Choi." "Yeah, she's giving me a citizenship award for bringing attention to HOA overreach." The Green Energy Protection Act passed last month because of what happened with my geothermal system. "That's amazing. You should be proud." I was proud. Not just because I had won money or gotten an award, but because I had stood up to a bully and made a real difference. Other homeowners across Illinois would now be protected when they tried to install renewable energy systems. The laws had changed because I had refused to back down. Sarah walked over and handed me a lemonade. "What are you thinking about? Just how much has changed in the past year. We wouldn't have been able to afford our energy bills this winter without the geothermal system," she said. "Our heating costs are down 68% from last year. That system will pay for itself in about 7 years. And the house is worth more too." Tom at the assessor's office said comparable homes in the area are selling for $25,000 less than ours because we have the geothermal system. "So you were right all along. I was lucky." If Marcus hadn't been such a good attorney, if the jury hadn't seen through Patricia's lies, if the police hadn't investigated the financial records, things could have gone differently. But they didn't. You fought the good fight and won. A year later, we were sitting on our back deck on a perfect summer evening when George called. "Patrick, I have news. The HOA board voted unanimously to install community geothermal infrastructure for the entire neighborhood common areas. We're going to use your system as a model. We wanted to thank you for pioneering green energy in Meadowbrook Heights." I laughed. "That's ironic. A year ago, Patricia was trying to fine me into removing my system. Now the HOA is installing their own. Times change, people learn. Your fight taught us all something important about standing up for what's right." After hanging up, I looked out at my yard. The grass was green and perfectly maintained, not because I was afraid of HOA fines, but because I took pride in my home. The small vent pipe from the geothermal system was barely visible near the fence. That tiny pipe represented so much more than just a heating and cooling system. It represented the principle that homeowners should have the right to improve their properties in legal, beneficial ways without fear of punishment from petty tyrants. It represented the importance of standing up to bullies, even when it's expensive and stressful. And it represented the truth that sometimes doing the right thing means fighting battles that seem impossible to win. Sarah came outside and sat next to me. "What are you thinking about now?" "Just appreciating how quiet it is. No violation notices, no harassment, just peace." "You earned it." She was right. I had earned it by refusing to be intimidated, by fighting back against injustice, and by holding Patricia accountable for her abuse of power. The geothermal system hummed quietly beneath our feet, efficiently heating and cooling our home while saving us thousands of dollars per year. The increased property value meant our investment had already paid off, even before accounting for the energy savings. But more than that, I had helped change laws that would protect other homeowners across Illinois. Representative Choi's Green Energy Homeowner Protection Act had passed with bipartisan support. HOAs could no longer block or penalize renewable energy installations that complied with local building codes and regulations. The law even included provisions requiring HOAs to process applications within 30 days and accept electronic submissions. Other states were now considering similar legislation, all inspired by what had happened in our little neighborhood in Naperville. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I had just paid that initial $500 fine and moved on with my life. I would have saved myself months of stress, thousands of dollars in legal fees initially, and countless hours of dealing with Patricia's harassment. But I also would have let a bully win. I would have enabled Patricia to continue abusing her power and stealing from the HOA. I would have missed the opportunity to make real, lasting change that benefited not just myself, but thousands of other homeowners across the state. The fight had been worth it. Every stressful moment, every dollar spent, every hour invested in building the case. It had all been worth it to stand up for what was right and to prove that ordinary people can challenge unjust authority and win. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Goldstein. "Congratulations on the award from Representative Choi. You deserved it. Thanks for letting me be part of your fight." I texted back. "Thank you for taking my case. I couldn't have done it without you." It was true. Marcus had believed in the case when it would have been easier to tell me to just pay the fine and move on. He had invested time and energy into building a compelling argument. He had been aggressive in depositions and trial when he needed to be. Good attorneys made a difference, and I had been fortunate to find one who genuinely cared about justice and not just billable hours. The sun was setting over Meadowbrook Heights, casting long shadows across the perfectly maintained lawns and tidy houses. It really was a beautiful neighborhood, much more enjoyable now that the toxic leadership was gone, and residents felt free to actually live in their homes without fear. George had transformed the HOA from an instrument of control into an actual community organization. The monthly meetings now included social time with coffee and snacks. Residents actually talked to each other and collaborated on neighborhood improvement projects. The fear and resentment that had characterized Patricia's tenure were gone. Several other homeowners had installed solar panels and geothermal systems after seeing my success. The neighborhood was becoming known as a green energy community, which ironically increased everyone's property values, the exact opposite of what Patricia had claimed would happen. I thought about Patricia sitting in prison, probably still convinced she had done nothing wrong. People like her rarely accepted responsibility for their actions. She probably saw herself as a victim of an unfair system rather than as someone who had abused power and stolen money. But that wasn't my problem anymore. She had faced justice, both civil and criminal. The HOA had recovered the stolen money. The neighborhood had moved on. Sarah squeezed my hand. "You okay? You've been quiet." "Just reflecting on everything. It's been quite a year. The craziest year of our lives. I'm just glad it's over and everything worked out." "Me too." We sat there in comfortable silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to dark blue. The geothermal system continued its quiet, efficient work beneath us, saving energy and money with every passing minute. The house that had been a source of stress and conflict for so long was finally just a home again, a place of peace and comfort. In the distance, I could hear children playing in someone's backyard. A dog barked. A car drove past slowly. These were the normal sounds of a healthy neighborhood, no longer overshadowed by the tension of an authoritarian HOA. My story had ended up being about much more than just a geothermal system or an HOA fine. It had become a story about standing up for your rights, fighting against injustice, and refusing to be bullied by people who abuse small amounts of power. It had become a story about how one person's decision to fight back can lead to systemic change that benefits many others. The green energy in my home had indeed increased my property value, but more importantly, standing up to Patricia had increased my sense of self-worth and had reminded me that ordinary people have the power to challenge authority when that authority becomes corrupt. As we headed inside for the evening, I took one last look at my yard. Everything was peaceful and orderly. The small geothermal vent pipe stood as a quiet monument to a battle won, a principle defended, and a community transformed. Tomorrow I would check the mail without fear of finding another ridiculous violation notice. I would maintain my home to my own standards, not out of fear of fines. I would enjoy living in Meadowbrook Heights again. The fight was over. Justice had prevailed. And my geothermal system would keep running efficiently for decades to come. A constant reminder that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, is always worth it in the end.